So, think about this for a second. If everything you hold dear, like your job, your savings, your reputation, maybe your entire social standing, if all of that just disappeared tomorrow, what would actually be left of you?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is an incredibly uncomfortable thought experiment right off the bat.
Right.
I mean, we spend our entire lives, sometimes decades, just building these elaborate, complex structures around ourselves,
Yeah.
mostly just to feel some baseline level of security.
We really do. We construct our identities out of our careers or our roles within our families, the numbers sitting in our bank accounts.
Mm,
It feels very binary to most of us. Like you have a prestigious job, therefore you have a solid identity. But if you strip all of that away, say there's a sudden layoff or a market crash or
a personal tragedy,
yeah,
that.
exactly.
Right.
Is there an actual indestructible foundation underneath all of that? Or does the whole house just kind of, collapse into dust?
Yeah, that's the big question.
So today's deep dive is taking us straight into that deeply personal and honestly kind of terrifying question.
And we're using a really fascinating lens to explore it, too. We are looking at a sweeping philosophical text titled The Sustenance of Life by the author Shuefeng.
Yeah, it's a dense one.
It is. And for you listening, the learner tuning in today, think of this deep dive as a chance to just step back from the frantic daily grind. It's a really rare opportunity to audit the foundational assumptions of your life.
Because we all get so caught up in the what of our daily routines, right?
Exactly. What emails to answer, what errands to run, what goals to hit this quarter.
Right. We rarely stop to examine the why. In this text, it forces us to look at the why and asks if the ground we are standing on is actually strong enough to hold us up over the course of a whole lifetime.
Okay, let's unpack this because this text takes you on a monumental journey. We're going from ancient Chinese philosophy to this really unexpected, almost radical synthesis of global spiritual teachings.
It really covers a lot of ground.
It does. It's asking an ages-old question like, where should we place our ultimate trust? What is the true, unshakable foundation of human existence?
Hmm.
But before the author gets to what we should trust, they spend a good amount of time meticulously dismantling where we mistakenly put our trust right now.
Yeah, they really tear down our current systems.
They start with a quote from the ancient sage Laozi. It basically says, the world can only be entrusted to those who cherish the lives of others as much as their own bodies.
That is such a beautiful, very macro level thought about leadership and ultimate selflessness, really. Laozi is setting an impossibly high bar for who deserves power.
Yeah.
But then Sufeng pivots sharply away from rulers and brings it right down to our front door. He asks the reader directly, like, where do we entrust our own lives on a daily basis?
And the answers he goes through, they hit incredibly close to home, yet he completely tears them down as illusions.
Oh, absolutely.
He starts with history, right? He mentions Guan Yu and Zhang Fei trusting the warlord Liu Bei, or, the common people of history entrusting their lives to wise rulers. Right, and to understand the weight of that, you have to realize that in Chinese history and literature, Guan Yu and Zhang Fei are the absolute peak archetypes of loyalty.
You're legendary.
They are practically worshipped for their unwavering dedication to their leader. So to call their legendary loyalty illusory it's a massive philosophical provocation.
For sure.
Shuefeng is essentially saying that even the most admirable, celebrated human bonds in recorded history are fundamentally flawed if you treat them as your ultimate anchor.
Because they don't last.
Exactly. History is a relentless teacher in this regard. It shows us that rulers fail, empires fall, and individuals, no matter how great or wise or loyal they seem in a moment, are fundamentally mortal.
Okay, the historical examples make sense to me, but then the text gets much more personal, and I found it a bit jarring, honestly.
Though the modern example,
Yeah, the author moves on to our everyday anchors, like relying on a spouse, focusing entirely on your small family,
yeah,
toiling from dawn to dusk for wealth, thinking money is like the ultimate shield against the world, or pouring everything into career advancement. The text argues that when the status is lost or the company goes bankrupt, the person's life effectively fades too. He even explicitly calls relying on a spouse a risky or crisis-ridden dependence.
yeah, that specific phrasing, crisis-ridden, is intentionally sharp. It's absolutely designed to shake the reader out of modern complacency.
It definitely shook me.
Right, because we are conditioned to believe that a nuclear family and a good job are the finish lines of a successful life.
I have to admit, my initial reaction was to push back hard on this. I mean, I love my family. I care about my work.
Yeah.
Isn't it just fundamental human nature to build a life with a partner and work hard for stability?
It's totally natural, yeah.
Framing this perfectly normal, healthy behavior as a crisis-ridden dependence, it just feels unnecessarily cynical to me. It feels like the author is saying we are building a beautifully constructed house, taking all this care with the architecture and the interior design, but we've actively chosen to build it directly on a major fault line.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Look, let's take your fall line analogy a step further, actually, because it captures exactly what Tufang is arguing mechanically.
Okay.
The text isn't claiming that family or work or saving money are inherently bad things. You can still love your family deeply. You can still do your job exceptionally well.
Right.
The underlying logic here is entirely about ontology, the nature of your being. It's about treating temporary things as your ultimate sustenance.
The ultimate load-bearing wall of your identity.
Precisely. If you make your spouse or your job at a tech firm or your stock portfolio the absolute center of your existence, the foundation upon which your entire self-worth is built, then you are mathematically guaranteeing a collapse of meaning when those things inevitably change.
Because they always change.
Always. People change, marriages end, sudden tech layoffs wipe out thousands of jobs overnight, economic crashes evaporate wealth. If your entire life is staked on something that is subject to the whims of time, aging, and chance, your sense of self is constantly in peril. That constant looming threat of loss is the crisis the author is talking about. You are living on a fault line, just waiting for the earthquake.
Man. So if putting our ultimate trust in personal wealth or individual relationships is too fragile, the human mind naturally panics, right? We crave permanence.
Oh, absolutely.
The logical next step for a lot of people is to zoom out. When the personal fault line feels too shaky, we move to a broader continent. We dedicate our lives to a massive collective cause, something seemingly bigger than ourselves.
It's the classic human instinct for tribalism and legacy. When the micro fails, we seek permanence in the macro. We look to institutions that we believe will outlast our own short lifespans.
But Shuang tears that down too. The author explicitly warns against placing our lives in the hands of mentors, political parties, religions, ethnic groups, or nations.
He spares no one.
He really doesn't. He calls dedicating oneself to these entities, crying out for a master's honor or sacrificing oneself for a party or nation. He calls it placing trust in a mirage in the sky.
An illusory castle in the air. What's fascinating here is how the text strips away the prestige of all these massive human institutions. It groups them all together into one bucket of impermanence.
Yeah.
It doesn't differentiate between a centuries-old global religion, a modern superpower nation-state, or a grassroots political movement.
Here's where it gets really interesting because, just as a quick timeout for you listening, Feng makes a pretty sweeping, controversial claim here by throwing every modern political party, nation, and global religion into this mirage category.
He really lumps them all together.
Right, and we, as your guides today, are obviously not telling you to abandon your political beliefs, drop your citizenship, or leave your religion. We don't take sides on modern politics or theology.
No, not at all. We're just exploring the text.
Exactly. But stepping inside the author's philosophical framework for a moment is a really fascinating thought experiment. He's arguing that dedicating yourself entirely to any worldly group is ultimately futile because on a long enough timeline, they all disappear.
The mechanism driving his argument here is the cosmic scale of impermanence. The imagery the author uses to drive this home is striking. They talk about floods that can rise to the heavens, but eventually, inevitably, they recede back into the earth. Human enterprises may flourish and dominate the globe, but they too vanish like smoke.
There's this one line that really stuck with me. It goes, "Even the mightiest empires have been buried in the ruins of history, and once great figures have been forgotten in the shifting tides of time."
It's so poetic.
It is, but it's a harsh, humbling reality check, too.
It forces you to look at the ruins of Rome or the forgotten dynasties of antiquity. Those people believe their empires were eternal, just as we believe our current institutions are eternal.
Right.
The text states that we, as beings of life, capital L-I-F-E, cannot place our existence in things that are not eternal. If you anchor your eternal essence to a temporary political movement or a border drawn on a map, you are still anchoring to something that will eventually be dust.
Right, it might take 300 years to crumble instead of 80, but on a cosmic scale, a nation-state is just as fragile as a checking account.
Exactly.
Okay, so the micropersonal attachments are out. The macro institutions, religions, and nations are out. The fault lines are everywhere. If empires fall and bank accounts empty, what is actually left for you to trust? What isn't a mirage?
Well, this is the pivot,
Yeah, because the text introduces the concept of the Tao.
which is a deeply foundational concept in ancient Chinese philosophy.
Right, but Swifeng explains it in a very specific way. The text describes the Tao as remaining constant and selfless from the distant past to the boundless future. It says its form might change how it manifests in the universe might look different from era to era, but its essence never does. Whether in the past, present, or future, the Tao is the only thing always there to rely on.
In traditional Eastern thought, the Tao is often described using the metaphor of water. It's this unnameable, eternal, impersonal force that sustains everything in the universe.
Yeah.
It flows, it gives life, but it doesn't judge, and it doesn't have a human-like personality.
And I'm struggling with this next bridge, though, because the text takes a massive, almost jarring theological pivot here.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say.
After establishing the Tao, it explicitly redefines it. The author writes, "The Tao is the consciousness of the greatest creator, the spirit of the greatest creator.
Yeah.
Therefore, the ultimate sustenance of life is to entrust our lives to the greatest creator." Wait, the Tao is an impersonal, formless force. A creator implies a personal, intentional deity, which is a very Western concept.
It is.
This is a massive philosophical collision. How does the author justify smashing these two distinct ideas together?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture of the essay, you can see the brilliant, if unusual, architecture of the author's logic. Remember, in the previous section, Shufeng heavily criticized trusting religions as human-made institutions.
Right, he called them mirages.
Exactly. By defining the Tao as the consciousness of the greatest creator, the author is attempting a radical synthesis. He wants the eternal, unshakable flow of Eastern philosophy, the Tao, but he merges it with the ultimate, singular intentionality of a creator.
So he's stripping away all the dogmas, the hierarchies, the cathedrals, and, the human politics of institutional religion.
Exactly that. He is trying to point the reader directly toward an underlying, eternal, and unchanging spiritual essence. He uses the terminology of a creator, but frees it completely from the baggage of tribal human religions, which he already established will eventually turn to dust.
That sounds incredibly profound in theory. A pure, eternal essence free from human corruption. But it presents a glaring practical problem.
Which
The greatest creator, or the Tao, is a massive abstract concept. If I'm a regular person waking up on a Tuesday, commuting to my fragile job, stressing about my fragile bank account, I can't interact with an infinite cosmic abstraction. I need something tangible. How do I actually connect with that?
The text anticipates that exact friction. Actually, it knows that humans need models. So it provides two very specific historical guides to help bridge the gap between our temporary Tuesday commutes and the eternal creator.
It brings in Christ Jesus and the Buddha Shakyamuni, which, again, is a wild synthesis. But the author claims that only these two historical figures have truly valued the world and loved all life. They gave up everything: royal titles, comfort, safety, dedicating their entire lives to the suffering masses.
And this is where the text introduces its most vital, actionable mechanism. It provides a distinct, dual metaphor for how we are practically supposed to entrust our lives to the eternal.
It's a really vivid image, too. The author says Shakyamuni devoted his life to creating a vessel, like a ship for eternal life. And Jesus Christ, through his precious blood and sacrifice, provided the direction, the compass,
The compass, right.
teaching that only those who follow the will of the Heavenly Father can attain eternal life. The ultimate conclusion of the essay is that we place our trust by boarding the vessel created by Shakyamuni, following the direction illuminated by Jesus, and thereby drawing ever closer to the greatest creator.
The ship and the compass working in tandem. Think of it this way. The modern world we live in, with all its anxieties, wealth chasing, and political tribalism, is a turbulent ocean.
A very turbulent ocean.
If you are drowning in that ocean because you're desperately clinging to the heavy weight of your job title or your bank account, having a compass doesn't help you at all. You will just sink while knowing which way north is.
Wow, yeah, you need the ship first.
Yes, you need the ship, which represents the Buddhist teachings of detachment from earthly illusions. You have to let go of the heavy anchors of wealth and status to get on the boat so you don't drown.
Makes sense.
But once you are safely on the boat, floating on the ocean of detachment, you can't just drift aimlessly forever. That's nihilism.
Right.
You need the compass, which represents Jesus's active, selfless teachings of direction and serving the will of the Creator. to know where to sail.
So what does this all mean for the listener today? Does the text suggest we have to literally follow two different religious paths at once? Do we need to be like taking communion in a church on Sunday and meditating in a Buddhist temple on Monday?
This raises an important question, especially considering the author's relentless takedown of institutions earlier. The text is absolutely not urging you to join two different institutional bodies.
That would totally contradict the mirage idea.
It would contradict the core premise entirely. Instead, the author is urging you to look past those institutional walls. The text asks you to utilize the actions of Jesus and the Buddha as practical psychological tools.
Okay, their actions, not their religions.
Exactly. Their supreme selflessness, their total detachment from worldly wealth, their ultimate sacrifice for humanity, these are the blueprints. You use their lived examples as the ship and the compass to navigate toward the eternal, completely bypassing the dogmatic institutions that human beings later built around their names.
It's using their lives as the blueprint for how to detach from all those fragile fault lines we talked about at the very beginning. It's an enormous amount to process, really. Moving from Laozi to modern tech job anxiety to the Buddha and Jesus. But I want to bring this right back to you, the learner listening right now. Let's use this deep dive to do a real mental audit.
A very necessary audit.
Look at your own life this week. Where are you placing your ultimate trust? Is it in a job title that could vanish in a corporate restructure? A bank balance subject to inflation? A political identity that demands your outrage?
All temporary.
Right. If Shuifeng is right, those are just mirages. They are beautiful, comfortable houses built directly on fault lines. What would it actually look like in your daily routine to stop relying on the temporary and start investing your energy into something eternal?
And I want to leave you with a final paradox to mull over as you do that audit. This is a tension that builds directly out of the source text we just explored.
Oh, I like a good paradox.
Throughout the essay, the author states emphatically that we shouldn't entrust our lives to non-eternal, temporary things. Yet, in the final section, Shuifeng simultaneously praises Jesus and Shakyamuni as the ultimate guides, specifically because they dedicated their entire lives to the suffering masses.
Right. They gave up everything they had for regular, everyday people.
Exactly. But aren't the suffering masses also mortal? Aren't human beings temporary flesh and bone?
They are.
So the provocative thought for you to explore on your own is this. If giving up everything to serve mortal humans is presented as the ultimate path to the eternal, does that mean the eternal isn't found by escaping from temporary things, but rather by how selflessly we serve them while they are still here?
Oh, wow. Does the eternal actually live inside the act of selfless service to the temporary?
Exactly.
That is something to sit with. If everything disappeared tomorrow, maybe what's left of you is simply the measure of what you gave away.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning your foundations.